All right, so the next economic system of our three core systems here is a command economy. All right, and so in this type of system, when we're looking at how are resources used and who gets to make that decision, all of those decisions, the allocation of scarce resources, is decided by the government, or a lot of times you'll hear it called the central planners, right? And so what that means is that the government owns the resources. And if they own the resources, they get to make the decisions about the resources. And so they get to decide what we're making, how we're making it, who's getting access to it. And they get to be the only ones in control of that. Right now, you as an individual in this system would get to decide how to spend like your money, but it's really the government that's controlling a lot of things. The only example we have of this currently, the closest thing we have to this would be North Korea, in which their government controls not just the economy, but I mean absolutely everything. Right? There would be a very strong authoritarian type of government with this, because you can't have a democracy and the government controlling everything. So most systems don't come from this. This wasn't like our original systems widespread, but we do see systems existing today that get a lot of ideas from this. Okay, so like I said, this would be complete government control. There'd be authoritarian type of system. Economic freedom, not important, because freedom in general would not be important, because the government knows best. That's the idea here. If you've ever heard the phrase father knows best, that's kind of what we're talking about with a command economy, that your parents know what's best for you, and sometimes they make decisions you don't like. The government, in this case, knows the best way to use the resources and the best products to make, because you as a consumer, you as an individual, you can't possibly know that for yourself or for others. And so the government needs to make that decision. So no economic freedom is going to exist here. That also means that if the government owns the resources, they own not a lot of property rights are going to be valued or exist. So the idea of a privately owned business, like you started it, not going to exist in a command economy, because the businesses are the government's. So you might run a business, and you might make money from running that business, but in the end, it's the government, and they can come in and shut it down. They can come in and say, you're no longer doing this job. They can come in and say, we don't like this product that you're selling. Like, they get to make all of those decisions, even if it, as you're operating, it looks like you're the one making the decisions. You're not, right? Because in the end, they get that final say. Okay, so a very strict, a very limited type of system here. Now, like a traditional system, the rules, what you're supposed to be doing, is pretty well known, because it's decided for you. Now, the government might not come directly to you and be like, you're going to be a factory worker, and you're going to be a doctor, and you're going to whatever, mow lawns, right? They're not going to do that, but they're going to set like, there might be class structures that exist. So depending on where you fall, that would decide what jobs are available to you, or it can be regional. It can be whatever they decide. But the idea here is that you're going to have a limited option. And so you're going to know what you have available to you. So it's really going to make your life easier, because, again, if you have all the jobs available to you and you're trying to figure out what you want to do, that can be a little bit, feel overwhelming. So that is taken away in a command economy. With this system, because it is the government in control, they can make changes in what products are being offered very quickly. They don't have to wait for businesses to wait for supply and demand to figure out, oh, we have a shortage or a surplus, and then we'll adjust. Or there's this thing that's happening, and maybe we should make the products that fit it. The government would just come in and say, stop making this, and instead you're going to make this product. And so that change would happen very, very quickly, which is good, especially if it's something major, like, for example, during the World War II, it was pretty easy for the Soviets to switch from domestic production to military production, right? And so they could quickly make that change when need be. They didn't have to wait for businesses to be like, should we, shouldn't we? We don't know. They're also very focused on economic efficiency, both in use of resources and making things that people need. Now, it's slightly different because we're not worried about the luxury items or a lot of the wants for people. The government is here providing for everybody, then they need to make the things that people need. So that is where their focus is going to be, and they're going to use the resources to make those products, not necessarily about the products that people want. There's also going to be a lot of economic security in this system because, again, the government is looking to provide for everybody. So nobody's really going to feel left out or uncared for. There's not a lot of what if this thing happens, what's going to happen to us, because the government would be there to be providing some kind of services or actual goods to you. Now, as I'm sure you're thinking, there's a lot of disadvantages to the system as well. And so the limited economic freedom is a big one. You're not going to see as much growth in this system because growth comes from businesses finding better ways to do things. This comes from individuals wanting to be more successful, and so you're working hard to come up with new things. And if that's not a focus for the system, then you're not going to see as much growth. Now, the government will want to make more, to provide more, but so you will have some growth, but you're not going to see the level of growth that you would in other systems. And like I said, when they're using their resources to make the things that people want, that they need, the wants get ignored. And so you're not going to see a lot of newer, well-researched, developed products. You're not going to see a lot of options as a consumer in a command economy, because that is a waste of resources. You don't need 100 different stores to look at to find clothes because you don't need that much options. That's a lot of wasted resources that could go to something else. And so you're going to be very limited as a consumer as to what you have available to you. There's also very little incentive to work hard. If you're getting a set salary or wages, no matter what, or if the government's like, we only need this much of this product, well, what happens when you reach that amount? There's nothing left to make. The government does want you to make more because that's a waste of resources. And so there's no incentive for you to try and advance in your career. There's not as much incentive for entrepreneurs because that would require private ownership, and there is none of that. And so that's why we see not as much growth, because there is that lack of initiative, that lack of reward for those kinds of people here. So go ahead and go to the next video. We'll talk about the last one, the free market.